Gaming Podcast. This is episode 6. I'm here with my special guest for part 2, Kaity.
Hello.
Thanks for coming back. This is we're still recording it here on October 22nd, same as last time. This week we're going to talk a lot about Cudo Plays, which is an organization you're a part of, which is a board game design competition. So we'll go into depth on that. No questions from the mailbag. Please do submit some, so we don't have that. And then we're going to discuss a few games we've played recently, and that's going to be it. That's a pretty streamlined outline this time. So do you want to give a little reminder about who you are, maybe for somebody that's just tuning in now?
Sure. Yep. My name is Kaity Bequette, and I have helped along with Cudo Plays, which is a local board game design competition, for a number of years now. We help people create their board games from start to finish. It's like a 7-month long program. I designed a game in year 3, and I've been on the board ever since, helping them work through it. Since then, I have helped play test for different publishing companies, specifically Elf Creek, to help develop some of their games. I now go to conventions to help demonstrate their games, to like demo those games and run kind of like guided play tests or playthroughs of those games. And then I am also one of the people on the Cudo Plays board who happens to have a master's degree and already work at the local university, so I help teach introduction to board game design at the university as well. So yeah.
So last time we started by showing a little bit that you have your artwork in the Atlantis Rising game.
Yeah.
And that but speaking of like artwork and things like we talked about a little bit about vintage trait and artwork being so important. I kind of wanted to mention this thing about they just released and I forgot to, but they just released an artwork book, like a coffee table style book of all artwork from Arkham Horror, the Arkham Horror line.
Awesome. From
Fantasy Flight. That's Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, a whole family of games. But man, that is it is just gorgeous. There's so much of it, and that's kind of I can't believe we're like living in this world now. Like if you went back 20 years and said, oh, by the way, there's going to be like a whole coffee table book just of art from one single line of board gaming. That's pretty cool, I think. It's really pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. And speaking of, would you buy something like that, by the way?
Yes. There's a book I've been looking at for a long time, which is just about Drow in the Underdark.
Yeah.
That's like published by, I think, Wizards of the Coast. I'm not exactly sure, but I look at it every year at Gen Con.
Really?
And I just I look at it and I leaf through it and I like hold it and it's beautiful, and then I like put it back and I'm like, I can't buy it this year, but it's gorgeous. And yeah, I think that art is important, and some people think I'm a little bit silly for paying a lot of attention to the art, especially in role-playing games when they're like, what if you read the rules? And I'm like, what if I see this beautiful art and then read the flavor text, and I'll make my way over to the main paragraph of whatever is happening, and I'll be more interested because the art is so gorgeous. So
do you play Forgotten Realms? Is that because that's where Underdark is from?
Great question. Yeah.
Okay, that's a really odd answer, but we'll let it go. So, do you read the Drow books or whatever, the R.S. Salvador books?
I was listening to the Dritz books, and I'm probably going to continue to listen to them because one of my characters that I'm playing right now in a game of 5e is a Drow, and I love her very much. But yeah, I'm playing Curse of Strahd right now, which is D&D 5e, and then
that's Ravenloft, though.
Yes, yeah, that's Ravenloft. And then I'm also in like 2 games of Pathfinder, one in 1st edition, one in 2nd edition. Also playing Traveler, which is a sci-fi RPG, and then a little bit of Vampire, but it's Thin Bloods. So I'm allowed to not know anything, is what I tell my friends. Oh, and I also bully people into having one-shots very frequently. So
if you really like art, there's a like an amazing documentary that I thought was great. It's got a great, like, one of the best, most clever titles for a movie ever. It's called Eye of the Beholder, and it's about the art from D&D, which the Beholder, if you don't know, is a very big Dungeons and Dragons. It's got the stalks with the eyes. Really fantastic documentary, and it basically just goes through the early days. You kind of watch like how they developed D&D, with obviously heavily about the art and stuff. It's just absolutely really. I thought, like, I heard about it, I was like, that doesn't sound very interesting. My friend was like, it's really good, and I watched it, and it is. I think you would really like it, especially if you like the art, because that they had like 4 or 5 just A+ artists working on the game, painters for a very long time.
Love that. Definitely gonna watch it. I want to get into like a photo series where my alter ego Magic Missel just recreates art, like vintage art of wizards.
Interesting.
And just like as herself, and so I'd love to do that, but I need to get like a different computer about it that can handle a little bit more image editing than I have currently.
So, speaking of pictures, I saw this picture like last week of Reiner Knizia, and I'll put it on the screen just here in a second. But if you don't know who Reiner Knizia is, he's Dr. Reiner Knizia. He's designed hundreds of games, like hundreds of board games. Some very famous ones include like Tigris and Euphrates, the Lost Cities, one of my favorites. He's done Ra is another big one of his. And, you know, I mean, his games are usually pretty dry. They're good, but they're pretty dry, not super thematic. And usually, like, you can cut and paste a theme or whatever, you know. But, you know, he's a doctor, and he's obviously using his mathematics knowledge and stuff to, you know, make these games, right? A lot of pyramid points and stuff like that. And he's been doing it for decades, right? He's one of the most famous designers probably of all time. And I saw this picture of him this week, and I don't think I'd ever seen a picture of him before, and I was like, what? So I was like, that is, you could have given me like a lineup of like 10 pictures and said you can get $10 million, and I would not have picked that as him. But about a week later, I saw that he actually, it was for a Kickstarter he was doing for, you know, for a trilogy of games. He put up like a game trailer, which is weird because like you watch the game trailer and you're like, I have no idea what's happening with this game, with these games, which is kind of an odd thing. Like I think there's a whole art to these trailers. You know, Cool Mini or Not does a great job of doing them. Obviously, they do multi-million-dollar Kickstarters all the time. But I thought it was kind of weird. But yeah, that picture of him was like totally blown away, which I thought was kind of funny. Just another quick before we get to the Cudo Plays stuff. I just want to. I saw this article about the ancient. Now, you see these occasionally. Ancient Discovery could be a board game from 4,000 years ago, and you see these all the time. Like this ancient Viking game just discovered and all this stuff. When you see that in an article, like, do you have any interest in that?
Of course. Like, it's always fascinating.
You say, of course.
Yes,
okay.
Of course. I definitely want to see what games people like had developed back in the day, because I assume like they had the time and like yeah, people did. So like, what did they want to make games about back then? You know. So fascinating. Love that stuff.
You think it's fascinating. It's interesting because to me, when these articles come out every now and again, you probably see one a year at least. You know, about something. To me, I'm like, I don't care about games from the 1960s. You know, there's another big article recently actually about Kurt Vonnegut. Do you like him as an author? Are you familiar?
Yeah.
I love him. I've read probably a dozen of his books. I really, really enjoy his stuff. And he, you know, there's all this hoopla right now about a board game that he designed. I'm just remembering this as we're talking. And, you know, they're like, oh, you can play it or you can read about how it's played and will it get published and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, you know, because like, to me, like, it's not until really the 2000s that really board game design, went into high gear and you started getting these very, very much more fascinating games. Not to say that, you know, so to me, I'm like, I don't care about the 1960s, let alone, you know, like 2000 BC or whatever. So, but I could see from your game design background and stuff that you might be interested in the history of it. And I love history, but to me, I see these and I'm like, and they're like, what does the game play like? I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because of like the social stuff that surrounds it. So like why games developed the way they did, because you know chess is ancient, Reversi, Go, that type of stuff, ancient games, and so they're good things to like know just to understand like metaphors within culture. And then it's just so funny to see how games had to evolve to respond to social things. So like, you know, Victorian games.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
They're not allowed to play dice because dice are of the devil, and it is it's gambling. So they had a lot of spinners and stuff. And then of course like Candyland, if you look at the original copies of it, the kids at the very beginning are throwing away their crutches because they had to start to make board games for the children who became disabled through polio. So they had to like actually start to develop kind of like these types of games. And yeah, during the Victorian era there's a bunch of parlor games which are very like physical party games that people would play.
Because you couldn't be like overtly like, you couldn't be like, I'd let you go on a date with you and perhaps do other things. You couldn't say that because like you had nothing was allowed to be talked about.
Yep, and then of course there's a long history of war games, and they actually use them for like developing strategy. So yeah, I like that stuff because I think like it shows you what was significant for the culture and what the limitations were like on their thoughts. And I think people will see that about games today and be like, wow, they were really obsessed with the like trappings of capitalism, and I wonder why. And I think it's cool.
So I mean, I think that's a great answer, by the way. much more like astute than my like I don't care about but I find history fascinating and I love reading about stuff and interesting things and hearing. So like I think maybe I should clarify and my stance now that I've gotten your very good answer
lecture.
on that. Yeah. Well, it wasn't really a lecture. Well, I guess it was a mini lecture and it was effective. But I think that the rules and stuff around that, no interest in it. The actual game itself. But yes, of course, history is fascinating to me, and all the things you highlighted are fascinating. But I guess I should say that, like the mechanism of the game, not interesting to me at all. But the history, of course, is always very interesting. Now, speaking of mechanisms and things, let's go ahead and start talking about your Cudo Play stuff. So can you just give basically an idea of what the elevator pitch for Cudo Plays?
Sure thing. So yeah, Cudo Plays is the Illinois local board game design competition. It is a branch off of Cudo, CUDO, which is the Champaign-Urbana Design Organization. And so the branch Cudo Plays is just the board game design competition. We settled on developing Cudo Plays because it's a very effective way to teach iterative design in rapid iteration. Because at the university in your industrial design classes, basically you 3D print a handle to a door, you get feedback by having people use it, and then you change the color and you're like, I have designed, hooray. Whereas for board games, it's so much more involved. You have to actually have a paper prototype, it has to be playable, and then other people have to play it, and they have to say whether they like it or don't like it, and then you have to listen to that feedback if you're a good designer, and then integrate it, and then develop another prototype version of the board game. So it's just a very, very good kind of capsule to teach design and iterative design, so that's why it's a part of the design organization. But Cudo Plays itself, we've also developed it over the course of the past 11 or so years. We're in season 11 now. I joined in season 3, I believe, or maybe it was season 2. What happens is it's a 6 to 7 month long competition, actually. It starts out with a number of public kind of events and meetups. One that you were at is called the Kickoff, which is just basically a PowerPoint explaining what Cudo Plays is, what the perks are, what the awards you get are, how the process works, and then we had a panel of former competitors there too. So we start with kickoff, and then we go to something called Board Game Boot Camp, which is where we have people in a room with board game bits and then themes and mechanics, and we give them those things and then a bunch of board game bits and say just go make a game in 4 hours, and people do it and they have a good time. So kind of what's your whistle, makes you understand that you can just design a game out of ideas. Then we have pitch night, where people pitch their ideas to one another and also ask for people to join their team or be like, I have these talents, please let me join your team. And now currently...
As a co-designer.
Yeah. As your co-designer, as your team, and we advise people to get teams typically in Cudo Plays. So now in October...
Is that really, that's a push? To get people to okay, I didn't realize that.
If you look up our strategy guide, which is under our resources on cudoplays.com, there is an entire page that's please have a team. Here are the types of people that could be on your team. You have a designer, you have a person who's very experienced with board games, a player, and then an artist. And everybody's always looking for an artist, so that's kind of fun.
It's the bass player of the band, right? Or is it bass player or drummer?
It's a drummer, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yep, and then so right now, as we're in late October, we're coming up on PlayCon or Playtest Convention, which is when we very lovingly have kind of one of our hardest deadlines for the participants. They have to have their game on paper or whatever it happens to be on and get it to a table in a way that is play testable. Now, typically when we invite the public to come to Playtest Convention to then play test these games and give feedback. We give people feedback.
How long into the process is this?
I say it's the halfway point.
And the whole process is
7 months or 6 months.
So about 3 months into a 7-month process. Okay.
Yep, exactly. So we want people to start iterating on their paper prototype quickly. And people are typically still drawing and erasing things and crossing things out in cards when we have PlayCon as well. I do have a little flyer for it as well. I don't know if you're recording on that one.
Yeah.
There we go. Cool. Playtest Convention. November 2nd at the Champaign Public Library. If anybody's local.
If you're listening to that and you're very local.
Mm-hmm. Very local.
Let me stop just for a minute, since this is sort of like about that.
Go for it.
Are there like other? I mean, is this a common thing? So originally, when I heard about Cudo Plays, I kind of thought it was like something that happened everywhere.
No.
So like you don't know of any other design competition like this?
Nope. The other design competitions that are in the country are typically like, you have there's Cardboard Edison, where you submit a design that you have, and there was another one that
we just talked about Edison taking designs last time, so
honestly,
that sounds really.
My friends with Cow and Duck Games were able to get their game Wind Up War published through Bellwether Games through a national board game design competition. But that one, they sent you materials, and they were like, in a couple of weeks, send back your rules for how to use these materials. And we used that in like the pandemic times when we were running like virtual game jams instead of the entire season. But no, this is the only like board game design competition that is like, first of all, hyper local. Second of all, we know everyone. We like hold their hands and like draw them through the whole process. And we're very, very cognizant about making sure that our events are accessible on bus routes. And then also we advertise all of the local places we can that give you like materials and resources as well. And also uniquely, we have a really, really well developed like designer community because of this competition too. So yeah, no, it's
I kind of
actually
knocked you off course there. With my question there. So you were saying that the pitch meeting, and then the playtesting, like, what did you call it again? The boot camp?
Oh yeah. Well, we have kickoff, boot camp, make a game for fun, pitch night, tell people about your idea, hear about other people's ideas, and then PlayCon is the next huge thing. There are smaller workshops for the people who are actually registered for the competition.
Which are mandatory, or?
They're not mandatory. Nothing can be mandatory. This is like hobbyist, but they're very, very helpful. So we just had the making workshop on the 20th, which is where my friend Chris Needham takes people to the Fab Lab and shows them basically how to use the laser cutter. Everybody wants to use the 3D printer and 3D print their pieces. It's not worth it. It takes too long and it's gonna collapse. Use the laser cutter. Oh, it's good. I promise.
A little pro tip.
Yes, it is. And honestly, like, we've done this several years, so we have a bunch of pros to give tips about it. So
it's funny that like when you there's like a hubris to like to like, hey, no, I can do it differently. Like, and there's like a pushback to things that you kind of want or you think is better, even if like the experts tell you. A friend of mine has they were thinking about growing a Japanese maple. So I looked at on their wall, there's like a framed picture of this article about how it's not advisable to do that. And they were like, well, I thought about doing this and someone told me, hey, it can't be done. I thought, well, surely it can't. And then they read this whole article about it, and they framed it to remind themselves. But, people do think, like, it's just a natural thing where people are like, I'll be different. I'll be the one person that actually solves this thing that is actually usually very solvable.
Exactly.
Sorry. So the makers.
Yep. So we have a making workshop, and then we have mini workshops for like the people who are competitors. So after the playtest convention, where people need to get their prototype played for the first time, we also host playtests that are kind of like you have to sign up for to get your game played, just to make sure we have enough people to play it, and that your game gets the attention that it needs. Then we have the how to present your game workshop, which is secretly the rules writing workshop, which we added just a few years ago because full-grown adults they'll wait until the very last minute to write their rules. Then it's basically kind of quiet over kind of like the holiday season. Then we have our team check-in, which is where we just like the people on the committee just like have a nice little chat with the people who are competing, because we've iterated on the competition itself and how it works, and we have a lot of people drop out like right after the holidays because they're just like, I can't do it. It's too hard to make a game. I'm not going to do it. And so it's an opportunity for us to talk and be like, for turn-in, you need these things. Also, you're doing fine. Like, it's
That's good,
it's gonna be okay. And then if we can make a blind play test happen, we do it within that range. And then turn-in is in February. while the games are turned in and being played by our panel of judges who are not the Cudo Plays committee. They're a different group of people because they need to be like as separated from the games as possible. While they're being played, we host the marketing workshop. We have now had a lot of people create games through Cudo Plays and within the community, and they've published it in a bunch of different ways. Cudo Plays is just the kindergarten basically for like developing your game, but we can always like give advice on how to get it published if you want to, because we happen to have a lot of people who have used a lot of different ways to get their game published. So that's the marketing workshop. And then the very last thing in March is our grand exhibition, when we return the games to the creators. And we invite the entire community to come out and then play the games in their finished iterations. And we give awards. There's 8 different awards that we hand out, and they are all like categories for different things that well-designed games do well. Like sometimes one game takes a lot of the awards. We also have runners-up as well, but it's good when a bunch of different games win them. So yeah.
I was kind of curious about that. I went to the kickoff meeting and I was like, just chatting with somebody who had been through the competition before, and I was kind of like, is this the kind of thing where like everybody's got to win, so we're going to give everybody something? But that's not the case. Some games really take the bigger haul, huh?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I can never tell. Like, I'm not a part of the judging subcommittee, so I kind of like, until the very, very end, like until the grand exhibition, I typically don't know who our judges were, and then also like what they decided, because they kind of keep, our judging subcommittee tends to like keep those results pretty close to their chest, and like sometimes we will have arguments on the committee about like, oh no, this game didn't get anything, what do we do about it? And the answer is, you just play it as truthful as you can. Like, you cannot, we cannot corrupt the process at all.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
But there's so much that you don't really think about it with that kind of stuff. Like, how to, from that side of it, you think like you're just helping people, but there's got to be a million things that you never perceive. So, in a nutshell, I mean, like, if you want to have a design, you want to have a board game design, like, you would go here, go to the kickoff meeting, get an idea about the timeline, which you need deadlines. Like, you can't not have deadlines because people will never do it. And then you've got some check-ins and some mandatory dates of, like,
a bunch of workshops.
Of, like, to help you to get a game prototype done, present it, all the things that you might need, and play test it, which is, like, probably arguably the most important part, right?
Yeah.
And then give advice, getting to the end, and then at the end you have sort of a awards ceremony. So somebody, remember, like, I mean, we were talking a couple of times with a couple of different people, and they were like, oh, I can't do that competition because, like, I can't ever get my game together and I always have a problem doing it. I'm like, that's the whole point, right? I mean, the whole point is that, like, it's kind of like we talked about last episode, where I was like, hey, I should read up on Marie Curie because I want to play this game, but the whole point of the game is that it's teaching you about her. And so this competition is, maybe competition is not the best word for it, because it's really just kind of like, it's like, we're helping you cultivate this game, right? And get it, you know, so you have this idea, connecting you with other people. It's amazing to me in that it's here in town and stuff like that. That's so very cool. So, you know, I think there's two kinds of people that are going to be like, hey, I have struggled with the board game design. I mean, it's such a huge hobby now that people, not only are there thousands of games coming out a year and they need designs, right? But, like, everybody plays, once you start playing a couple, you get into the hobby, you think, like, one of the first thoughts you think is, I'm going to make a design. We all go through it.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's really amazing to me, right? Like, that, like, you can help people make games. I mean, you've had how many, 11 seasons total?
Yep, 11 seasons. And, like, the pandemic season was kind of a weird one. Like, we had more game jams than actual competition. That one was kind of interesting. But, like, to speak to what you said about hubris, it's so interesting to see kind of, like, people's life cycle as they go through games. First of all, you're right. It's kind of, like, less of a competition, more of a, like, a community building thing to everyone's benefit. You know, rising tides help all boats. And, like, sometimes people are like, are you going to take our designs? And we're like, the only thing we take is pictures, which is part of when people turn in their games to us to get played. They have to, like, print out their rules in triplicate and then also have a picture of the setup of the game, a picture of the game in progress that's accurate, and then, like, how to pack it away. And we take professional pictures. Andrew Stingley does this, actually, who is just on the show. And we give them those professional pictures to, like, use. And in marketing workshop this year, we're going to teach them how to build a sell sheet. But so that's part of it. And then to the hubris point, often people will, like, the first time they go through the competition, they're just like, you know, so stressed, so happy to make a game. They're like, I got this. And then they finish it. And, at the Grand Extra, it's like, oh, there's so many things we could have improved upon. I had this idea and this idea. So the second time they go through it, completely different game, they're like, I've made a game before. I don't need your deadlines. This is silly.
Yeah.
And then,
it
does not work out too well. And so like the third year, and we do have repeaters come through, which is amazing. But yeah, by the third year, people are like, these deadlines are so helpful.
It's one of the most important things.
Yes.
And it's kind of like when, like when you put something out there, like you tell everybody, look, I'm starting to work out, or I want to try to lose weight or something. Like some people are like, why, okay, why are you telling me this? But when you tell somebody like you're intending to do something, it adds like some more of a weight to it. Like you feel like, if you're like, I really want to start working out, and then you don't tell anybody about it or put anything like. And then if you just say, oh, I don't want to do it, then there's no like kind of social repercussion. It's just like another reason to it's like the sticks and carrots that push you to do things that you ultimately want to do, but you maybe aren't that good at. Totally. I'm amazed though that this isn't like like a national thing where like all cities can sign up for this kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like
it's very open source. We actually, not only do we have the strategy guide developed, which like tells people like how to go through the competition and has like worksheets and stuff, and you can find it for free on our website. I think the current strategy guide up on the website is from season 7. We're working on making a season agnostic one, but we are also internally developing / have developed what we call like the manual, the Cudo Plays manual, which is like how to run a board game design competition in your own city. But not every place. We're very fortunate that we have a committee that is as large as it is. I think we have like 8-10 people, and each person like has a very specific role, and each person gets burnt out at different times basically. So we kind of like are able to like back each other up and run things and MC and be like the tech person for this or that event. And again, I have nothing to do with some aspects of it and like run other aspects of it.
Well, it's like you were talking about like the idea of like partnering up with somebody. Like you want to make a mystery game, you're great at writing, you're not great at the game part, somebody's great at the game part, but they can't write. I mean, like, so on and so forth. Obviously, the art is a different, kind of aspect. So, how does, just as a logistical question, how do you guys keep afloat? Like, this stuff I always think of, when I see like, oh, this is a cool little store, it sells plants. And then I'm like, how is this paying for their rent? So, do you guys, do you take advantage of like you're not for profit, etc.? Like
correct. Cudo, the Champaign Urbana Design Organization, is nonprofit. We have a Patreon, which is really like great. And so when people are just like, I want to help support Cudo Plays, we're like, please donate to or sign up for the Patreon for Cudo, and that keeps us afloat. And then also like being a nonprofit, we do get like deals in town sometimes as well. Although like one of our locations is not going to be available for our grand exhibition, so we're kind of looking into how to make that happen. But yeah, we do get donations from people, which is really great. Our goal was to lower like all the bars for being able to get involved in the hobby, because typically when you have like hobbyist board game designers, they tend to be like of one demographic, because those people happen to like have the time and the like finance to be able to like get into it. So we wanted to make sure that our events were free, and that they actually like were accessible to people, not only like literally being able to get on a bus and get to our locations, but also like accessible in terms of like us being there, not gatekeeping and like explaining things to people. So and the way that we stay afloat is just like the hard work of a handful of people. We meet almost every Saturday at 10 a.m.
Oh, really?
And discuss like what's coming up, what's happening, and then have different action items for that week. And then that's basically how kind of Cudo Plays stays happening.
So I wanted to there's something that you said there was interesting to me, was the fact that like this is a little bit of a tangent, a little bit of a rabbit hole, but like like you said, like this idea of like making things accessible to people, like putting it on the bus lines and things like that. Often with a business like this, well, not really a business I guess, but an organization like this, you don't have, you're not like a major corporation that can say, well, we got to be near the highway, because you don't have those kind of, most of it's probably like, hey, we got to take what we can get in terms of like, donations or whatever. But like, I was working for a few years for a hospital, and I remember they would have you watch these training things, and just like it's very fascinating, that bus thing that you said, because they had this whole thing about like these are things that keep people from getting care.
Yeah.
You don't live near the hospital, can't get to the hospital. Maybe you don't speak English, and you don't want like your son or daughter who does speak English to have to worry and know about all the things that are wrong with you or whatever. Like there's like 4 or 5 different things about like, and the hospital was like, this is Carl, local, and they were like, they weren't just like, these are problems. They were like, this is what we're doing to solve this. Like they have a mobile clinic, to go to areas that are more difficult. They have like translators that that you can talk to, like this mobile monitor.
Cool.
So you can, and it was just like they identified all these problems, and they were like, these are the problems, and this is how we're going to fix them. And it is interesting, obviously, like, if you have, we live in a very, we're very fortunate in our society, in this country and stuff. We have a lot of things that we take for granted. Just kind of, that's a long-winded thing about just kind of thinking about, like, I'm amazed that you guys thought about that kind of stuff on that level. Like, it seems like a detail that could easily be kind of forgotten, but it's interesting you don't think about that kind of stuff. So you said, so out of all these seasons, what do you think? How many, do you have any idea, like ballpark, how many games do you think have come out of the competition?
Let's see. I'd say probably more than 150.
Yeah.
I think we're at that point. So like a good season for us is 12 games because we have like 8 prize categories. And so if we get 12, I am happy. But some seasons we've like only had like 8, and I don't know if we had a season that only had 6. Again, this is all like public information that's on our website, cudoplays.com. We have an Airtable with all of the games that have been created that you can sort and take a look at all the pictures that we've taken over the years. But yeah, I'd say it's definitely over 100 for sure, because 10 by 10, and it might be over 150 right now. I don't know if we've hit 200 just yet, but we might get there this year.
So, anybody publish a game out of all this whole competition? Get like something major public, not a self-published game, I should say.
Well, let's see. What do you got against self-published games?
I don't, but I'm just kind of curious. I think it's a natural question. People want to say, "Hey, you've done this competition for 10 years. Has a major publisher, picked up one of the titles?"
Yeah, one of the games was called Horde Hoarding when it was developed. I think it was in season 4 or 5. I'm not quite sure. Someone comment and then correct me. It was picked up by Paizo, by the creators of Pathfinder, and then it just held in contract hell for a number of years. And then it was finally published as a game called Goblin Firefight a couple of years ago. So yeah, that was really great. There's this hilarious awesome. Picture of the father-son duo who created the game winning the award, and then a picture of the father-son duo holding the original, the published one from Paizo, and that kid just shot up. You can, it's clear how much time has passed.
Sure, that's interesting.
Yeah, and now he's a sophomore in college. It's insane, but yeah.
So, I've gone to a couple different of the events that you guys have had. I've not designed something through the competition. Honestly, yet. But I went to one of the kickoff things, and this is just a little story about it. So it's kind of interesting that it's such a cool thing, right? People they stand up, they get 5 minutes, they talk about either their design they have in mind, or they talk about hey, I want to make a game like this, and then people raise their hands and they call on them and they'll say hey, have you thought about doing this or that? And it's really pretty neat. It's kind of almost like a big brainstorming thing, which is awesome. And the one I went to was held in a local candle making place that has an event space and a bar and everything, right? Yeah. But here's my story of my little nitpick. It's not about Cudo Plays. It's not. Okay. It's a nitpick about I'm within striking distance with you, and I always am a little low key afraid of you.
That's fair.
This guy, he really didn't have much of an idea what he wanted, right? But he's like, hey, I want to be in the competition, and this is kind of the concept I was going for, and and this is obviously I'm biased because it was my idea, but I felt I had the perfect idea for this guy, and he was just sort of it was like an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where you're like, how about this? And the guy's like, I don't really care. But the idea, so he pitched his idea, and this is just to kind of illustrate what, because you could go up there and be I know everything about the design I want to make, right? But you could also just be, and the guy said, look, my family's they're like always using words wrong or mispronouncing words, and people are like, wait, is that a word? And they're not sure what the word is, and it was something to the like, it was essentially like that. And he's like, I kind of want to make a game like that, and I was like, why don't you like make a game using a very popular mechanism, which is the Dixit thing, right? And so like you just have, you come up with words, and the person has to say the word, like you know, like you think of Austin Powers, or Mike Myers. It's not Austin Powers, but he's like, maybe it is. I put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable, you know. And so it's like you say the words you have to, your goal as the person trying to get the points, or say the word weird enough where somebody's like, I have no idea what that word is, right? But some of them know, and if you get a mix, then you get points, and the people that guess the actual word get the points. And it was a lock completely in with this theme, which was mispronouncing or weird words and what do they actually mean. Or you can do the balderdash thing where you're like, what is this? You know, you say it weird, and then somebody has to look at like 4 different definitions or whatever. And I'm like, that's like, it was just locked completely in with his theme, and it was simple. Like he wasn't an avid gamer, he was a non-gamer, and I'm like, that's perfect. And the guy was just like, okay, maybe, you know, and he was like, went on, I'm like, that's the perfect idea that locks in with your theme. It was just like, you know, which fine, I don't really care, but it was just kind of like one of those Curb Your Enthusiasm moments.
You gotta come in and make that game. And that's one of the things that like there's so as a bit of an aside, there are, having like run the competition a lot, there are some of what I call secret lessons about Cudo Plays that we will just like say to people until we are blue in the face, and people just like don't learn it until it happens to them.
Experience
and so,
is a great teacher.
Exactly, experience is a great teacher. And so luckily with our like and like the event you're talking about was our pitch night from last season, which was in Fire Doll here in Champaign. But yeah, that's one of the things, like having to play test your game, being able to follow the fun and kill your darlings is one of the secret lessons that people kind of need to learn through experience, and like play test, blind play test. And then listening to the experienced people in the community about what is too complicated of like a mechanic or a theme to involve is also like really important. So it sounds like you hit on one of the like more nubile game designers who's like, oh, that's fine, but also I'm sorry they didn't think your idea was cool.
That was, well, it was just the fact that, and again, like I'm not like, hey, my idea was phenomenal. I mean, it's a pretty basic like, you know, hot take of a thing, but the whole thing was like that it was just like, it seemed perfect for the idea that he had this, you know, but anyway, you know, the idea is that like people can kind of talk it out. And to me, like, I want that in my life all the time. I used to, when I lived back home, like I had a huge friend network, and you would just be like, I have some ideas or I have some things that I'm thinking about. And one of those amazing things, and I really miss it, you know, all the time, because I used to be able to just go and say like, hey, I'm thinking about this, and then you could just talk it out with your friends, and they'd give you advice or ways you could do things differently, you know, or you know, or even if they just said something and it got other thoughts going or things that you can consider. Having a support network is really important, and that I remember seeing a woman do a pitch, and she was like, I'm not really much of a gamer, and she was like, I was thinking about making like a card game, like euchre or something like that, and she was on the panel this last time, you know, discussing stuff. And I'm like, that's amazing, because it just shows like, hey, she learned stuff, and you know, especially seeing people that are non-gamers. That's what's so fascinating to me. Like, I always think like, you know, because I saw some people from the game shop, from the local game shop, Magic scene and stuff, in there, and you would expect to see people like that. But it's kind of surprising to see people that, you know, they don't have any idea about what is going on with games nowadays. You know, they have no idea, and it's really very interesting.
Oh yeah, the real, what is it? Something that we like to say, one of the other secret lessons, you know, it says it's a board game design competition, but you know, like the real prizes are the friends you make along the way. Actually, no, for real though, we have a really, really well-developed board game design community because of it, and it means that if someone comes here and needs to play test a game, like, we give some good feedback. Oh, can I speak to one more game that was actually published outside of Cudo Plays? So we have a few games that were published using Kickstarter, and one of them that was just like an honor to have in Cudo Plays was Globetrotting, which is by game designer Jeff Chin. He just happened to be in town because his wife was getting her degree at the university, and they were like having their baby here, and he was like, I'm just going to join the competition. We're like, oh my god, okay, cool. The creator of Canvas, great, wonderful. And so, yeah.
Oh, they designed Canvas.
Yes. Yeah.
That's interesting, because I have seen that they have a locals section at the game shop.
Yeah.
And I saw the Canvas was there, and I didn't, for some reason, I didn't put it together like
because we can claim it because he lived here for a little bit.
Okay.
So, but yeah, he like used the competition, just used it's kind of like scaffolding, and then like playtest opportunities and like PlayCon, and did the whole thing. And then if you look at Globetrotting now on a shelf, I'm pretty sure it has like a couple of insignias of Cudo Plays that be like it won this prize and this prize. And
So
this
was
prize.
an actual designer who had a published game, Canvas, which is a national published game, right?
Yeah.
Or international published game. And they brought a design they were working on 2 Cudo Plays and went through the whole process.
Yep.
That's
and
unbelievable.
Published the game after that on Kickstarter.
Wow.
And like there's always like we have a lot of very philosophical discussions on the Cudo Plays committee about like the nature of the competition, and if we need to like make certain categories for people who are more experienced designers versus like more newer designers.
Boy,
and,
he probably crushed it that year at the...
I mean, I think he won a couple of the prize categories, but like it always comes down to like that's a little bit too complicated to legislate essentially. And we don't want to ever like we never want to like discourage anybody or block anybody, and yeah, people can make really, really interesting games if they're just like first-time game designers too. So we just want it to be an open playing field for everybody, basically. But we do have those internal discussions and like rip our hair out a little bit and be like, oh no, is this okay? Is this ethical? But the answer is, it's board games. Everybody chill. We are doing our best to...
Like first world problem.
Exactly.
So we talked last episode a bit about the idea of table presence and stuff. We were talking about because of your Essen experience. Like that globe, I've not played it, but it's like like a physical globe.
Yes.
It's maybe the size of a baseball, and it has a pedestal or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like connecting different points on this globe or whatever. It has plastic housing and the inside has like the. I'm like, I've not played it, and it's one of those where I'm just like, I'm like fascinated by just I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, I don't think that game's gotten that much buzz. I mean, Canvas got a lot of buzz. I feel like Canvas was a real big success. I don't think Globetrotters was, or Globetrotting was as, really got as much success as that, but it's really an interesting one to see on the table, and it's really, I think, surely it won the Innovation Award at Cudo Plays that year.
I'm not sure, but you can see on our Airtable on our website.
Okay. So, but I mean, like, it just, you know, it is interesting to see, like, how, because I think a lot of times publishers probably avoid stuff like that, right? Because,
it's complicated to manufacture.
Right.
Yeah.
And which complicated is another way to say expensive, right? And so, yeah, really, really interesting little design that thing was. Have you played the game, obviously?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I like it's set collection. You're planning a little a vacation, and then that's how you like connect with things. Then go to 3 different seasons, and you've like shared vacations with people. Yeah.
So that game, like, I mean, if it was not complicated and it was just like a mass market style of game, you know, obviously the production would be irrelevant because you know, I'm not irrelevant, but I mean, you know, you're making 10 times, you know, like a staggering amount more. You think of like Sorry, the punch, what do they call the thing again? The punch-o-matic?
I have no idea.
There's some name for that thing. I can't remember. It's like, but you know, that would be a big expense. But because they made like 80 trillion copies of Sorry, it just becomes like much more easier to manufacture or more affordable to manufacture. So the competition. So you like, do you get ideas now where you're like, oh, I should enter my own game, or is it just too much to?
Well, it is very complicated to make a board game. I do get ideas, and typically, like, yeah, the sounding board you kind of were talking about earlier is like the rest of the Cudo Plays committee kind of for me. So I'll come to it, and only if I feel like a game is actually a good idea is when I'll be like, we should do this. Let's see, I have not like designed a game for like the competition, like since really like joining the board. Although me and my friend Tom did design a wardrobe, which is about like fighters, and it's a set collection dice game.
I love a good pun.
Yeah.
Wardrobe, that's good.
And so we did create that, but like as a part of the committee, we can't really enter it to get prizes or like to be judged or anything. It's kind of just like a fun exercise for us. So, and also, you know.
Oh, hold on. So now this is my little sounding board thing.
Sure.
We're just talking about table presence and like the difficulty of making those plastic things. Yes. But having like a cardboard put together big wardrobe, like Lion the Witch wardrobe thing.
That is not a part of the game, but it would be cool.
That would be, even if it was like, so, you know, like some games have like Colt Express has like trees and things that are superfluous to the game. Like you don't need that. And I just saw in some of the game that was selling like a plushie like of their character in the game, which is again superfluous to the designer. It's not needed for the gameplay, but you could do something like that just to give it a little more table presence.
And it's a dice game, so it could be a dice tower. So
oh, that would be amazing. There you go. Yeah. So I just talked about that last episode. Murray Curie, they have that dice tower, and it's like the radium thing. I don't know what I guess I didn't learn that much from the game because I can't remember the tower is supposed to like sort of show the difficulty in acquiring the resources. So did let's see, I got my little list here that I was kind of like so I guess are there any like other interesting like kind of like good stories around anything that like anything interesting to
we definitely like have a bunch of catchphrases that we use, and part of it is like part of the catchphrases that we have tried to stop using is like kill your darlings because that's not really nice, but we do say follow the fun a lot, so encouraging people to like listen to feedback and then like implement that feedback in the iteration of their game, which like it takes a lot for some designers, like because sometimes people have a game so far developed in their brain and they're like, I want it to be this, and then they kind of like we're like, okay cool, now put it on the paper, and they're like, well it doesn't work, and we're like, it has to work like this. So once they get it on the paper, and then people are like, I don't know about this aspect of it, but I really like this aspect of it, and then they're just like, that's not what it's about. So you get kind of like sometimes mad scientisty about it, and we have to be
possessive about this.
Yes. So you have to like be willing to follow the fun if you want to develop you know, the type of game that like people want to play, and that can be really hard for some people, but like, you know, game designers who like are good at kind of like aligning the experience that they want along with like what people find fun about it is really important. So like, and being able to take that feedback, and another catchphrase that we kind of have that's like a little bit of a secret lesson of Cudo Plays is save it for the expansion. So a lot of times designers can get like very, very into their concept and be like, because the truth resists simplicity. Board games are always going to be an abstraction of something more complicated. And so they'll be like, and when this happens, it then triggers all of these things. And it's like, you can make a Rube Goldberg type of thing, but you can't make this part of that game and this part of that game. So choose one of those things and then save the rest for the expansion. And then if you really want to come back to it, people do and people can.
I think like, you know, that's a big deal. So recently I was talking about some games where, and I'll actually, some of my games I'll talk about here in a few minutes here, like the idea of like these games that kind of you go through these different scenarios and occasionally they'll add new rules or something and add new pieces. That's like so exciting and it allows you to learn the base game. But I think like a lot of people might be stuck in that older thing of like, you know, the culture of gamers now is like, buy this game, learn to play it one time, and then you're on to another thing, which is a whole other conversation. But like, I think like maybe back, you know, 20 years ago, maybe you could get away with stuff like that, where your game might be overly complicated, or there might be some weird rules in there that are not, you know, easy to, you know, intuitive, you know. So like, but now you got to have that because these games are not, you know, they're consumed so much more quickly and lightly in some ways, you know. So you know, but as you say, but if you have an idea that you really love and that's what you want to do about the game, sometimes maybe that just is the impetus to get the game going, and that's not quite as. But recently, I just talked about too about the, you know, the concept of there's some games that have come out recently that if they're too innovative, then they have to like cut the game in half because it's too much. People will just be lost. You got to have 1 foot in gaming now and 1 foot in innovation, which is a really fascinating subject all on its own.
That's what happened with the initial like board game renaissance here in America when Catan came over. You know, Catan in like the regular German copy of it, it is not just Catan, it's also Cities and Knights, it's also Seafarers. It is all the expansions into one game, and to bring it over to the American audience, I'm not saying they had to dumb it down. I'm just saying they had to simplify it so that it was grokkable by the American audience who were very used to, you know, your Victorian games, your Path games, your Saris, your Candylands, your Take That, your Vegas style Ameritrash games, which is words that we don't use as much anymore.
No. Well, games are becoming so much more, you know, genre bending. Like it's like it's not as used in movie metaphor. It's not just like you're not making westerns or horror films anymore. You're making like this big Frankenstein of all these other kind of genres, and those are the best movies, I think, of the genre bending ones. And I think that's true too for like, you know, mostly anymore the best games that come out, you've got a ton of different mechanisms in there, which I think is interesting. You talk about, we never got around to talking about Catan, yeah. But I was thinking too, Carcassonne is another example of that, where it's like, it's a game that's like, hey, it's very approachable, super gateway, but there's a million little expansions, inexpensive ones, that you can just kind of keep playing these interesting things. I just saw on Board Game Geek store, they have these maps that are like these, you play on these maps and it gives you like an extra thing to do or whatever. You can play on a map of, there's like Chicago, LA, there's Britain ones and stuff, and I'm like, that's so interesting. So like if you really love Carcassonne and you've complicated it with all these other things, you can kind of like play through these special maps and things. And I think that's such a neat thing, like you know, it's like an easy buy-in, and then it kind of gets a little more. Are you a fan of that kind of game?
Oh yeah, for sure. One of the prize categories within Cudo Plays is replayability, and so like that asks the judges to consider like which one of these games would you play again, and then like if you played it again, how different would it be? The game that I developed with my friends Tom and Zach and Annie in season 2 or 3, whichever one it was, which is called War Trains, which is about, of course, trains
Wardrobe
that
is
are...
better.
It is, right. Trains that are going to cities, and either they're like melee fighting to get to that city, or they're participating in range combat as they're trying to get to the city. Like there were a lot of cars you can add on to your trains, and so it got replayability award just because they were interested to see all the different like types of cars you could build onto it. Although that did come from a pun, by the way. You might find this interesting. The kickoff for that season, Dan Cermak, who used to work for like the video game company Volition here, he is a war game collector, and so was talking about his collection. And I had played a lot of Ticket to Ride back in the day.
I see where this is going.
Yeah, so I was like, it seems like all games are about war and trains. And then my friend Tom was like, that's our game. And I was just like, no, it's not. And it was. It ended up being our game. And it was.
All right, I take it back. I like that as much, if not more than wardrobe now. This is going back earlier. Sure. I kind of I didn't get a good chance to mention this, but you know, you're talking about like playtesting and like you know, writing the rule books and like you know, killing your darlings and all this, and like the guy is saying, hey, I can't get the idea out. There's kind of I don't know, like a story that's been circulated a lot about Matt Leacock, Pandemic Design. You know, that also ties into the idea of like abstracting things. I mean, like some of the best games really, you know, they abstract things quite a bit, right? You have to, right? But and that's of course very abstract. But the story was like where he had gotten his design done and he was getting it play tested by his friends and things, and he was, you know, he was explaining. He's like, oh, let me try. No, I'll show you. You're doing this wrong. Let me explain it. And they were like, no, just sit in the corner. We're gonna play this, because that's essentially what has to happen, right? When somebody opens a box, you know, I mean, obviously we have the ability to watch videos now, and we have a lot more learning tools now, you know, than in the past. But essentially, most people are gonna open up that box, take out the book, they're gonna read it, and they're gonna have to play it, and they're gonna have to understand it, right? And so like that's such a huge thing, you know. And that story of like just no. Go sit in the corner, we're going to play this game, was like one of the most important things that he ever did.
For sure. And it's so hard for us to like get a, like, this is kind of like behind the curtain, but like we always strive to like have a blind play test happen. And previously we would do it at Volition, and then like those game designers would like, you know, bring in their like friends and family, because they have like more intimate knowledge of like game design, and they would blind play test the games as well. And we haven't really been able to make that. Let's see, I can't remember if we made it happen last year or not. What I can tell you is, like, from the committee perspective, it's always a little bit of a lift to be like, hello, can you please come in for an entire afternoon and read the rules of these games that are in development, so that the designers can see what they've missed in their rules, and then also what you intuit as a part of the game. But blind play testing is so important, and
I wanted just to ask you quick, because I do have a question based on that, or more of a comment, but before I get too far, I wanted to ask you, because you talked about Ticket to Ride, and I love the legacy. I'm like completely on board for the legacy games. Like the experience that they offer is like no other to me. Like playing through, so we talked about Pandemic, playing Pandemic Legacy 1 and 2 and 3, some of the best experiences I've ever had playing games ever. And so you're a big fan of Ticket to Ride. What did you try the legacy version?
I have not. I would like to. I like. Let's see. I both love like the original like European Ticket to Ride a lot, and then also like burnt myself out on it. But also I love it so much that I'm afraid to play other versions of Ticket to Ride, like the American and the Bridges and Tunnels one. Yeah. Well, back in the day, so like it was my first like board game that I found that I like really really liked before I found like the Cudo Plays community before I moved here actually.
Okay.
And me and my boyfriend at the time played the Ticket to Ride app like on our like computers / iPad, and it got to the point that I know within the first hand if I'm gonna win the game or not.
That's unbelievable.
There's a certain combination of cards. It's just like it's you know it's these rabbits here in America, and I'm just like there used to be another community called Cubed, the Champaign Urbana board games designers and engineers, whatever spells cubed, and we used to get together and just like discuss games and kind of break them apart, and we'd play a game and then discuss its design elements in depth, and we played Ticket to Ride once and I was like, oh, I'm gonna win, and they'd be like, no, you're not. I'm like, guys, just let me win. I sat it through the whole game, and sure enough it happened. So no, I have not played Ticket to Ride Legacy. I would love to, but it would also be very bittersweet because I'd be like I don't know if I'm going to win or not.
That's so okay. So that's real. Okay, that's a number of very. I love that little story you just told because like it's got so many interesting elements to it. Number one, like it really is fascinating to get to a level, and we don't do that in our hobby anymore. As I say, everybody's like one and done's a lot.
There's a lot of games to choose from.
Yeah,
so.
but like at that time, you know, that was such a big game or whatever. But like. That's so fascinating to be at a level of any game or anything really to be able to say like, look, I can see just from this how this is going to like, which is really fascinating, and that can kind of be a long topic on its own. Secondly, the idea of you know you talk about like talking about the games afterwards and stuff. You know, and this is kind of a little quick story, but. I that's so important to me. I can't just finish the game and be like, well, time to hit the old dusty trail. Like I gotta talk about like how things like, oh, this mechanism prevents this thing from happening. You can see that this is made to make it easier to understand how to do that. You know, for bandwidth or whatever. Like I'm fascinated by that stuff. Why things work, why things don't work. Really interesting. But there's so many people that are like, no. And you know, I remember like hearing some stories where people were like annoyed when people like they're like, well, the game's done, I want to go home. And it's like, no. And other people are like, you cannot just leave. We have to discuss this whole thing and this experience. But that's great that you got a group to be able to do that with.
Yeah, this is definitely like a discussion community for sure, because now we're all of our brains are so steeped in board games, and once you like design your own, once you like think about how to break apart like mechanics and like themes and how they come together and how they can reinforce each other or not, how sometimes they like tear each other apart and are counterintuitive, like it's so much easier to see, and then you can really kind of like get your fingers in there and be like, what about this game works? And what doesn't. So.
You know, Jeff Engelstein, who I have so much respect for, I really like. Are you know him?
The name is familiar.
Yeah, he was kind of a big name on the Dice Tower for doing game tech. He reads. He's very smart. He reads all these articles and then he'll like explain how things work and stuff. I mean, but he had a whole ludology podcast he was on for I don't know 100 episodes or something. And then now he's no longer part of that, but he's also designed a number of games like Space Cadets Dice Stool and some of these pinball games, a bunch of stuff. But anyway, he had this whole thing which I think about a lot. You know, it's interesting when somebody tells you something about game design or something, and it just sticks with you, and how important like intuitive things are. Like he's like, okay, if I told you this piece can move on the blue areas, this piece can move on the brown areas, this piece can move on any area. And you're like, I gotta remember that. That's tough to remember. But then you say one is a helicopter, one is a boat, and one is a tank. Yep. Now you know the rule. You don't. Nobody needs to tell you that rule because you already got it. And that's so crazily important to me when I think about games and whenever there's a game nowadays where I'm like, there's some weird rule where you're like, that doesn't jive with the rest of it, or I have to remember this. Like I hate it. I really do. Like it almost makes me angry, to be honest with you. Like,
yeah, that happened when I played like zombie dice once. It was like you roll it and then like these certain like dice faces mean things. And like they were telling me like, yeah, this means you get away, this means you reduce in health points, this means this. And I'm just like, what's happening in this game? Like, what do these icons mean thematically? And then I will be able to learn it. Because, yeah, that is what's really, really important about the themes of games. And we have had people in the competition who are very mechanically minded. And they're like, this is a magical, like, roving city. And it picks up these things. And, like, people just cannot comprehend what's happening. And so they've had to, like, actually change the story of the game in order to make the mechanics and then make the, like, rules more comprehensible to people. So, no, theme's important, especially if the iconography kind of, like, helps you describe the mechanics.
That's going to be like, roll and write games are the biggest thing right now. I think next season is going to be roving magical cities that pick things up.
Yep.
I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, definitely.
So this has been a great conversation about all this. But I do want to. There's one more thing I want to talk about before we talk about a couple of games each, and that is It's you and Andrew who's on the last guest host. Like, you guys play test so many games, and you are involved in so much of that. You play test way more games than you play, like, published games. That's correct, right? Well, for him, that was correct.
For him, that's correct for sure. He and his partner Molly helped run the play tests that are part of the competition. I do not make it out to, like, nearly all of them, but
what's the ratio you think for you?
Oh gosh, I think the ratio for, like,
play
published game versus, like, oh gosh.
Half and half.
Well, it is kind of half and half, actually, because I do try to make it a point to play, like, the games that are in development as a part of Cudo Plays. And we have, like, our monthly game night, which we do published games until we get, like, deep into the competition. And then if there's a prototype, the prototype takes priority to be played. But, like, yeah, Andrew and Molly definitely, because they run the extra play test nights, they get a lot more prototype played. So I'd say maybe half and half. For me, just because I try to play the games that are in development with Cudo Plays.
So with you, the two, I'm like, that is like a nightmare for me.
It's tough.
I do not. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that's like, I just want to play published games. Like, I don't want to play any play testing stuff. Like, same thing with, like, movies and stuff. I generally, I like independent movies, but I don't want to go to some film fest or constantly be watching, like, like the lowest, just the people that are in the local college that made their film, like. And to me, like, if I were mostly playtesting or even half playtesting, I would not be in this hobby.
Yeah.
I feel like you're like, that's like the selfless, wonderful act that you guys are doing.
I do try to play, like, let's see. I'm going to say I try to play published games, but, like, I always, like, throw myself into playing a bunch of prototypes because we all, like, now have this kind of, I don't know if it's a unique skill. It feels like a unique skill, probably just because we're, like, a small-ish town, that, like, we have the power to be able to give very specific feedback. And if you're around the people who are able to take that feedback, that's good. So it's not just Cudo Plays that I play unpublished games for. I also go to yearly Jamie Stegmeyer's Design Day down in St. Louis.
Oh, I wanted to talk about that too. Yeah, but we'll have to maybe...
We can a different time too. Yes. But it's a lot of fun. But I am also playing a lot of unpublished games, and sometimes you get the next big thing, and, like, this game is going to be published. It's going to be a hit. That recently happened with one of the games called Stamp Collector by our friend Paul. And then sometimes you play a series of games that are like, oh boy, these are going to have they have some road to travel. And you just have to be, like, it's a unique skill, not only to be able to extract the feedback that they need, but also to be able to deliver it in a way that's, like, not hurtful.
Maybe that's a whole skill in and of itself. It's really hard to deliver those messages that, like, people need to hear, but it's not a nice thing to say.
Yeah, but
I remember I thought about this recently, where, like, when I used to retail manage, and, like, if somebody came in and they did not smell good, it's really hard to tell somebody, look, you have to this, but you can't have somebody like that in a retail setting. It turns people away, turns customers away and stuff. So it's part of the dress code or whatever. But it's not an easy conversation to have. But yeah.
Exactly. And it just so happens that, like, our brains are very much kind of, like, tuned now to giving that feedback. Although it is, I will admit, it is, like, really, really nice. You get to kind of, like, turn off that part of your brain if you're playing a published game. You just kind of get to admire, be like, this is good. And, like, that is why it is published. Or something bad where, like, this is not good. And that's when you hop on Board Game Geek to see if everybody has the same complaints that you do. And, like, yes, usually the board game community is very, very good at delivering feedback too. So
It's really interesting to me, like that this hobby has grown so much to have these completely new, you are teaching board gaming, you are on a board that helps people to realize their dreams of designing games, and you also have this unique thing we talked about last episode about the idea of like going and demoing these games and the opportunities that all of that has led to in your life. That's really fascinating. I didn't say this right at the top because I allow you to kind of introduce yourself.
Sure.
I feel like it's kind of like a bit of mansplaining maybe for me to like, these are her accomplishments, but I always think of you as like the mayor of this town, like everywhere I go, it's like, I think, there's a goth night that we know each other from and stuff, and you're always involved in all these things. And when I think there was some Christmas parade or something, and you were in it, dressed up and kind of part of the parade, and I was like, is there any, like, I feel like there's no there's no rock that I could overturn and you wouldn't be there involved in some way. It's a very very interesting.
I mean, you're also there at those things, which means that you're participating in the community, which is very good. But it's not hard to get involved in things in this community. You can throw a rock and hit a game night, first of all. The second of all, like, it's very much be the change you want to see in the world, and like literally you have to be that because there are not enough people to make huge things happen. So yeah, I happen to find myself in a lot of things.
So let's we got a little bit here, we're kind of running late on time, but I wanted to talk about a couple of games. So you want to start us off with something that you played recently?
Oh, sure. Listen, this was Spiel des Jahres in 2017, and it's still good. It still earns it. It's Magic Maze. I love a co-op. Have you
Hold on. What? Did you see my list?
No. Oh, why do you have it on there?
It's on my look. It's right there. Magic Maze.
Oh, sorry.
I thought you were trolling me in a huge way. That's hilarious.
I literally just played it last night. I did not take a picture of it though.
Okay.
Because so our monthly published game nights for Cudo Plays, it's every like third Monday at the Hyatt Place in downtown Champaign. We played at a bar, but the lights got too dim, so we just started occupying this hotel lobby, and they're cool with it, which is great. But our theme was like witches, wizards, and warlocks, because I wanted it to be witches, and we had to kind of expand it. And so I brought Magic Maze because it was technically within it. And now it's limited communication, tile laying. You know this, cooperative. You each get a direction and have to like move. You collectively move the pawns to where they need to go after they have like lost their weapons in a magical mall, obviously, and then you have to navigate them all to an exit or to their different exit. We didn't even get through the second level, actually, because I did not see that we needed to get to a time stop, but that sucked. But still, I love cooperative games. I love limited communication games as well, so stuff like the Mind and Tranquility and things like that. So yeah, no, and I didn't realize when I bought the game back in the day, I didn't even know what the like Game of the Year insignia meant. Like I did not understand what that was, and then I was at S and I'm like, oh, that sticker's on a lot of my games that I have because they elect good games. So yeah, co-op, limited communication. Love it. Magic Maze.
I think it's not going to be... This is one that's like timed games is like people love or hate. And that game's amazing. So like I love the fact that you have to like I can move people that way. And then you're like you can't tell anybody, but you can look at them and you can put this red piece in front of them and say, you need to move now, and then you're just looking at all the other pawns like I don't know who you want me to move. There's timers that are on the board that you flip over, and if any timer or you can go to these moments where you can these spots that can flip the timer. But if you flip it like too soon, the way timers work is sand timers work is that the more sand is now on the bottom, so you've sort of lost out. So if you flip a sand timer that's a minute long, at 50 seconds. You've lost those 10 seconds, but now you have, you have 50 seconds left, right? But if you do it the other way, you have most of the sand on the other side. I explained that terribly, but hopefully you understand like the way the sand timer works, that if you flip it too soon, you have much less time. And you can only flip it so many times, but it is really a very fun game. Now, it's one that I was just kind of talking about the concept of, it's like 15 different missions, and each of the missions adds rules, makes things more difficult, expands the game, adding more challenges. And I wish every game did that.
How many have you gotten through?
Oh, I've done them all. Yeah, I did them all, and so my wife and I played through the whole thing when it came out. I loved it. I recently bought the expansion. I have not been able to play it yet.
There's an expansion?
Yeah, there's 3 expansions, I think.
That there? The tower?
That's what I'm going to talk about. That's one. So Maximus Security is it. So the reason I was going to talk about that is because I did play a new standalone game in the series.
Oh.
But let's put in that just for a second because I wanted to.
Sure.
So when I was at this convention, ironically, I played Magic Maze with my first game I played in like a year with my friend Jesse, and it's like I went to this convention, I played a game with somebody I used to play with, like that I already owned, and then I played like a solo game that he had designed to try to like see it. And I go to this convention, and that's what I do, which is like really
the convention
very
is
hilarious. But anyway,
there for whatever you need.
So yeah, I Magic Maze is just absolutely phenomenal in my opinion, and I really, it's interesting because these games like The Wrinkle of Time, not the book, The Wrinkle of the Time is like having that is like what makes the game interesting, and so I was going to talk about that game even though it's a little older because I played it somewhat recently, but I also wanted to talk about. There's a new game that it just came out on Friday. I picked it up yesterday, and I actually have a playthrough and a review on the channel. But it's a standalone game called Magic Maze Tower, and it borrows a lot of the similar things. It's just puzzles though. It's instead of the other game you could play over and over and over again. The tiles are all changing all the time. The puzzle is ever changing. But this is like it's established puzzles. So each of the pieces has a different move that they can make. Special ability that you'll need to use to solve the puzzle. There's an additional fifth pawn as well, and you're working together again in the same way that you're moving. Like I can move things this way, and you can move things this way. If you have different player counts, you divide those tiles up, in different ways. But like it doesn't really matter because there's no time. You could just be like, I'm waiting for you to move, but there's no rush to it anymore. And so it's just the puzzle. And what you'll do is you'll play. You'll take like either 4 or 8 mats it's like a huge stack of mats. It's like a book. It's heavy, and you'll take like scenario 1, adventure 1. There's 15 adventures, and you'll take those 4 or 8, and you'll play the blue side, which are just 4 or 8 mini quick puzzles, and then you'll flip them all over. You'll make a big board, and then that'll be the next thing. So there's 91 different puzzles in the box. Some of them are like minute long, some of them are 5 minutes, 6 minutes, but. So far, I really like it. I really like the concept of it. I like it's different but very similar to the predecessor. I think the Magic Maze is much better, but I think this is a fascinating little idea of having played these puzzles. Now you had this cat game last time, and I think that you have to watch the last episode. But it's a puzzle, and it's great to just sometimes sit and do that instead of mindlessly going through your phone. But this game is it's the same kind of thing. It's just you're just going through these puzzles trying to solve them. I think if you play it alone, great. If you play it with a friend, maybe better because you have that. You got to move. I can't move this way or that way. But I think also maybe a little frustrating because you're like, it's some of the boards. I feel like because there's these air current things where you can only move one way, and I'm like, there's one in particular I think of that like I would probably have murdered someone if we were playing that together because it would be very very like crazy to do. But yeah, so far the puzzles aren't that difficult. I played about 30% of it so far. They're enjoyable, and I definitely enjoy it, and I think it's worthwhile. It's like $30, and I know I'm going to get my money and time worth out of it. I'm going to really enjoy it. I am enjoying it, but I don't like love it because I think so far out of the first like I said, 30 I probably played 30 to 90 puzzles. Not that difficult so far, and I'm hoping that they're going to get more complicated or more difficult. To play because I think the component of the other game is the fact that the timing is so important.
You want the challenge. It sounds like.
You know what's really important?
What? Wait.
Timing.
Oh,
that's from Michael Clayton. I can't believe you didn't see that go.
I know. I was like, there's a joke here that I'm missing.
Yeah. A joke. Not that funny, but a joke. You got another game you want to talk about?
Yeah. So for Design Day, we go down. We stay with my friend Melissa, and this year she's like, we have to play this game. It used to be a computer game, and I see it on your shelf too. Dwarf Romantic. Which is another co-op, another Spiel des Jahres. They're correct.
That one, the Spiel des Jahres?
I mean, it has the thing on it.
I didn't remember that. Yeah, interesting.
Okay. 2022. Yeah. It's also, I love a co-op game, and this one is just so tranquil and so cute, but also like a little bit kind of like terrifying because, let's see, you might actually have to help because I need to recall this from playing it like back in like September, I think. It's a tile laying game. You are developing kind of like a countryside, a civilization that you have, and there are different types of like terrain you can lay down, and then there are requirements that evolve as you play the game. So it's kind of like a campaign level game, I think, and you can like track your progress, and then you get different like tiles revealed based on what you have accomplished as a part of your progress. So yeah, you got farmland, you got forest, and you have to like, you know, respect where rivers are and where railroads are and things like that, and they can't intersect unless they can with a very specific tile, and each person gets to like lay down a tile, and it's just so funny, the like shorthand of non-verbal agreement and disagreement sounds that emerge.
Well, you're not allowed to talk. I'm only playing
You are allowed to talk. Yeah. It's just that my friend group has gotten very good at like very good at passing judgment. Yeah. Like, we don't realize that we are all going to make exactly the same sound when, like, Tim lays down, like, a very specific tile. But we're like, ugh! And he's like, okay, not there, Jesus. And then, again, you're not supposed to quarterback it. It is cooperative. But we all also, like, confer with each other. Like, here, yes, okay, cool, wonderful.
So this is you can't lose this game. I'm telling you, so you can't lose it. It's a point, you know, you're trying for a high score, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're gonna...
I lose it if I don't get at least an A- is my...
This game, really, I think this game is a 10 for me. I absolutely love it. So, I played like 10 or 12 games in a day of this one time. I just was like, and what I think the coolest thing about it is that, like, the higher your score, the more points you get to spend on, like, you kind of fill in these little gray spots. And when you get to the end of a spot, you know, like, you get to unlock a new box, which gives you additional rules, additional tiles. So it lengthens the game out, meaning you're going to score more points, but also gives you some additional ways to score points, some additional rules to think of, which is the same thing as like Magic Maze. Yeah. Evolving the game and making more rules, making it more interesting. So you're like excited about trying the new tiles, and it keeps the game fresh. It's like an expansion in the box. And you know, you can have a competition of like, because the ultimate goal is like you want to get above like 300 or something points, and that will unlock everything for you, something like that. And it's like, so you could say like, hey, look, you need to unlock all those. There goes the my little moon. The night owls. This is for like, but you essentially like could say, hey, I managed to do it in 10 games or whatever. And this you can. It's not really like spoilery or whatever, but the route you take to unlock different tiles, you know, is up to you. You know, so if you played it and you had experience playing it, you could go around and get certain tiles that you know will score better for you, and develop almost like an engine, you know. But it's very cozy. It's just fun to just sit and play and try for a high score. I like I say, I think it's a 10 for me. I love it.
Oh yeah, I consider like, I think with my friend group, we like see the tiles that we could get if we score high enough. And it's like, we won't get the hot air balloon unless we get here. Yeah. And then we get like just under that, and we're like, no. And so, but you're right, you actually can't lose it. But I lose it if I can't get that locomotive. You know, just like the tiles that are additional that help you score extra points in extra ways. And then being able to utilize those tiles like in the game itself. Yeah. It's cool.
And it looks great too. Now, two things about it. I bought Dorfromantic the Duel, which is a 2-player thing. I've not played it yet, but I only bought it because it has extra stuff for the base game. Because I'm not going to play the dual version of it. I'm just like hoping to reinvigorate that. But in addition to that, they have a sequel coming out, which is a Japanese, I believe, Japanese.
Yep.
So I'm very keen on getting that. I'm actually really excited. Like, it's one of my favorite games to play, solo, campaign, just, I mean, like I said, I could spend a whole day playing it, like, you know, just play it, and then, you know, go take a break for a while, come back, play another game of it, and very cozy.
That's what we did our last day in St. Louis with staying at our friend Melissa's house. Like, we could go get lunch, or we could wake up, play Dorfromantic, and order in, and then keep playing it until we have to leave. So we did that.
There's a game called, did we play Tranquility?
Yes.
Because that's another one that's supposed to be very enjoyable and peaceful. Now, Dan, who was the guest host on the first couple of episodes, he said that game stresses him out to no end because he knows, like, he's like, he wants to make the right move. And the whole point of the game, I thought, was supposed to be like, it's tranquil. I thought that was really kind of funny what different people find stressful or not.
I find it stressful in a good way, but I just love games where I have to read my friends' minds because I can usually, and so that's kind of fun.
Yeah. So those are your two. My last game that I want to talk about is a game called Flashback Lucy. This is a game that and I want to mention I have if you Dwarf Romantic, I did a review and did an overview on the channel if you want to see what that game plays like and stuff. But this Flashback Lucy is like, have you seen this?
I have not, actually.
So there's really a growing trend of games like cold case kind of games, mystery kind of games like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, murder, like these Murder of a Millionaire, Murder in a Casino, which are like going through different, you're just solving a mystery. And this game is kind of like, is like that. And it's very similar to another game called Perspectives that I really enjoyed as well, where you're just looking, Perspectives is like all pictures and you're like kind of trying to solve the mystery and answer the questions at the end. And essentially that's what this is. It's in 4 different parts, 4 different eras. The story is like a girl who can pick up items and, you know, relive the last moments or whatever the person that was holding that item. And so it takes place over like, goes back like to like the 1800s, and each one, the first one's like present day, and then it's like 1970s, 1900s or whatever, and then 1800s. And it's all through just cards, and you really, there's no really way to lose it. You'll play through a vision, they call it, and then you'll answer some questions, and the questions are only revealed through doing things. So if you don't reveal all the cards, you won't get all the questions even. But you'll try to just answer those questions, and then you know you kind of can score it at the end. I got all the questions. It was like I got all the not the questions. I got all the cards. It's not hard because like you'll bring a card out, and then it'll have a number on it, and you'll see a person like looking, and then you'll say okay, and then you'll pull that card out, and it's kind of cool because like you might see like me sitting here, and it would say like 1, and then you know and then you'll see 2 is you, but you're looking at me, and so you'll be able to see from everybody's like viewpoint, and you're just kind of solving this little mystery. It has like an overarching kind of story. There are some really great escape room style box things that I'm not going to give away, the spoilers. There's a few things in there where I was like, you know, because overall the game's fine. I mean, it's more family weight, or it seems like a great like intro to this type of game for like a family. So I think like if you have like some younger kids and maybe like 10-year-olds, I don't have kids, so but you know, like if you have like some younger kids like in that age, maybe you can just kind of sit around as a family and like reveal the cards and talk about what you think. And it's pretty quick to play. I think you can go through the whole thing in like 4 hours, 3-4 hours. But there are a couple of moments that like, I think if you're sitting with your family or friends, you're gonna be like, oh my God, that's really clever, really kind of cool. There's a few surprises in the box. And it's, again, a very inexpensive game, but it is a one shot. You play it, you're done. I do a review and a playthrough on the channel, but probably you don't want to watch that because it is spoilery. But wow, it has for that small little package, it does have some very satisfying, interesting things that it has in there. But yeah, do you like playing these style of games, these mystery games?
I like playing like Exit and Unlock if I have like a group of people to play with, and like my friend Melissa in St. Louis is like a huge part of that as well. She like also runs an escape room, and like just has like this insane puzzle brain. And I've told her I got Paint the Roses, which is another kind of like deduction game with like logic puzzles, and I was just like, Melissa, if you're not here, I don't know if I can play this.
Wait, because you need somebody to run the game?
She is just good at solving things. But yeah, as long as I have like a group of friends, group of people there, I love like the exit games. I do worry if I have any puzzle games solo that I'll get frustrated and then just stop. And so I haven't tried too much beyond that little cat game I got, which is approachable to the point of me being encouraged to finish it, I think.
Well, so that's more of a puzzle.
Yes.
But like these are like, you know, this is huge genre now, like of like, you just get like a folder and it's just like file papers and like reports and phone records and things like that, and there's no rhyme or reason to like how you go through it. You just read through things and try to understand. And this game is not quite like that. It's very similar more to like Perspectives. I think like it's very interesting, like Perspectives, I really enjoyed that. That's more like an adult kind of a game because there's much more deduction and thinking that you have to do. This is more, it seems much more family friendly, but I think that's always important to have something like, you know, you can introduce to your family and play and enjoy, but also help them to get to that next step, you know, and again, at the price point stuff and the surprises, it's really enjoyable. Anything you want to chat about? We're just about out of time here, but do we have time to talk about as a little epilogue here about the Jamie Stegmaier thing, or is that a pretty big topic?
I think it's a pretty big topic.
Okay.
But I mean,
I want to, because I'm really
yeah.
curious about it. It sounds fascinating. Well, just tell me real fast, like, it's open to the public?
No.
Okay, so you have to have a special invite. So you got an invite because of Elf Creek Games?
You have to buy tickets, and if you have attended before, you are on the list to get tickets again. So what happened is, like my friends Jess Chu, Katie Cow, and Tim Keelhorn, because they were kind of like in the Cudo Plays space, happened to get like an invite to the very first design day that happened in like the basement of a church, and so then they were on the email list, and then I joined the board and I was like, I would like to also go to this. And so then I've just been on the email list, and basically we have a group chat, and as soon as they're like tickets are coming out, we just like get in and just kind of.
And what is it? It's just really fast. Like, what is the idea of this? It's like a one-day con.
It's a very, very structured day where designers bring game designs that they're working on. They have to like submit like what the game actually is, the title of it, and like kind of how it plays, and then you get time slots for when you're hosting your game, and then the players get to go in and like sign up for time slots throughout the whole day. They supply breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then they have a scoring for like rating the game, and then the designers get a lot of really, really useful feedback from other board game designers, and then other people like me who like have done this and can give feedback. And then so you get to play either a bunch of really innovative, interesting games, or you get to play a bunch of games that really need a lot of feedback, and that's also totally fine. And yeah, it's a very, very, very structured day. And then
how many people go to this? How many people?
Oh gosh,
50,
I'd say it's around like it's about 50 to 60 people because
awesome.
it's hosted in pieces. The board game cafe in St. Louis, but they are moving locations soon. But it's a really, really cool location, and it's a cool thing. And it's not like officially where Stonemaier Games finds new games, but one of the games.
One can dream. That's the dream, right?
One of the games that was there is now being published by them. So like, it's not a direct route or anything, but it is a way for them to be able to see kind of like different games that are being developed by different designers. So
that sounds interesting. I'd really love to have a longer talk about that, because it sounds it's a very like, I know that there's another convention that like the Gathering of Friends or whatever. You've heard of this?
Yeah.
It's like all the designers go.
That's
it's like
very much
Niagara,
invite only.
Yeah, that's like Niagara Falls or something like that. I think it's somewhere in there. And then like that's we're like looking in from the outside, right? So I think that's an interesting subject for people. But listen, I'm really glad you came out and talked to us. You have such like I said, like a unique, I mean, I keep saying this to all my guests, but it kind of, that's part of the reason why I pick people, to guest hosts. So I appreciate you taking time to come out and talk and stuff like that. But and again, like just having this SN experience like most people don't have, and then having the Cudo Plays thing, which is really fascinating, and it's just an interesting topic. So I really enjoyed having you on. Is there anything else you want to tell? You haven't really decided whether you want people to find you or not, but
that's true.
Yeah, we'll put that those links below. We will have links for Cudo Plays, of course, as well as Elf Creek Games, your other notable accomplishment or whatever.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk? Any other good stories or anything else you want to?
I mean, let's see. Any other good stories? I mean, I did think of one where, like in Cudo Plays, it's kind of like for any type of game. Some people meet at board game boot camp and like take the game that they designed in 4 hours the full way. And once we had this like 60-year-old dude who came in who's like, I've been mailing this game back and forth with my brother for like 40 years, and we're just ready to kind of like put a bow on it at the very least and finish it. It was called like Neighbors or Neighborhoods, and it was like a poker variant that had more aspects to it, and his pitch was terrible because it was very much just like describing what it already was, and it was a soft-spoken older dude, and then the game was solid. So like, really, it's just so funny the different types of games that come out of Cudo Plays, and you can spend as much or as little as you want. The person who you identified, Emily, who made a sugar glider game, she got like special art and special pieces. What do you thought? Kind of manufactured. You talked about her pitching at Fire Doll, and then was on the panel this year. Okay. So she made her own art. She did this, so she spent like a little bit of money on it. And then one of our game designers, named Taffy, who's a grandma who just makes games that her grandkids are gonna play. And it's so funny because her games are getting more complicated as they're getting older. She's like, with the goodie bags that we get at the end of the competition, I actually come out, I think, on top. I actually come out like maybe even having made some value. And it's like, thanks, Taffy. I appreciate that. So that's it. Just a couple
Yeah.
last minute stories
Yeah, well,
for Cudo
we're going to
Plays.
extend this a little more too because there's two that made me think of two different things. Number one, there's a band I used to love called Fate's Warning. I used to love the progressive rock metal and stuff like that. And they had this thing. They'd kind of become just this core group of three. There was the drummer, the bass player, the guitarist. And they had vocals too. Maybe there was four involved in this part. But this is like late 90s. And what they would do, now doesn't mean anything because everybody's so connected. But at that time, much less connectivity in the world without, the internet was, of course, prevalent, but not, or around, but not prevalent. And like the guitarist would record a bunch of guitar tracks. He would send it to the drummer or the bassist, and the bass would put his tracks down, send it to the drummer, he'd add his drum tracks, and they would assemble the song just by like passing along, and then it would come back to the first person, and they would, change things or whatever, and it would just go that way. They would just mail their tapes back and forth.
Cool.
Which is fascinating to me. Now, of course, it seems like much you could Zoom or whatever and be connected, but at that time they lived in completely different places, and you think a band gets together in a studio and they just had this really unique way of doing that. And I thought that was so fascinating and really time sensitive. Right now, things are different, but it's like a little bit of a time capsule. I always found that really fascinating.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so giving you a moment to talk about to respond to that before.
I can add to it for like.
You can if you want to. I just trying to be like a good back and forth.
That. For Cudo Plays, we have some people who occasionally have designers, co-designers elsewhere. Jeff Chin actually had that, like a co-designer in Canada, I think. And then we have a number of international students who will also kind of compete as well. And our rule is like one person has to have boots on the ground in Champaign. And like that's our kind of like overarching rule.
That makes sense.
No, yeah, that totally happens where people can like send games back and forth still. And like with Jeff, he was developing his game, and you can like take a goal for globetrotting, and if you don't complete it, nothing happens. I'm just like, this should count for half points, and he's like, that's what my co-designer said. And I'm like, I know.
So but to pass that back and forth for 40 years is pretty interesting. But so second thing about there's so many games that are like chess variants or poker variants, and I'm like, yawn. I don't really. It always makes me like, I'm not interested in that really, But occasionally, it still is quite popular. There's a lot of games that use kind of poker as a central mechanism, or as the whole game, or or maybe just a piece of it in Western style games and stuff. But Gen Con this year had a poker variant. I can't remember the name of it.
The Gang. I forgot to talk about it.
Is that the poker variant?
Yes.
It's cooperative?
It's cooperative poker. It's one thing I forgot to bring up in the Essen episode.
Yeah.
The people they had demoing it, they actually had little poker tables.
Yeah.
They had little fedora. They were all dressed
Oh
like...
yeah, the arm garters or whatever.
Yep, it is the only way I have learned how to play poker even a little bit, because I'm terrible at poker.
I read a lot of. I played. We had a poker night on Monday nights for like 6 years or something back home in New York, and we, that was like a big deal. I used to read. I read a bunch of books on it and stuff like that.
Whoa.
Which now I'm like, I don't really care because I love the other aspects of gaming or whatever. But it is pretty remarkable to me that like they have one of the big hits of Gen Con was essentially a poker variant or cooperative variant. So. It's interesting. They keep going back to the well in terms of like, and a lot of games like when Codenames was huge, first coming out was so huge. People were like, it's password, but gamer's password. So people love to say that it's gamer's poker, it's gamer's fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
So
I guess so. I love the Gang, and
I'd like to play it more. Yeah, it's not available for everybody yet, right? We had a copy of it, and by we I mean people at Tim's house. So I'm gonna see if I can track it down. Well. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for coming on. It was a very great couple of episodes, very fun chatting with you and stuff like that. For now, I gotta roll.